Now, as we jump into chapter 43, we shift to one of Isaiah's other favorite. He's got quite a few favorite themes, doesn't he? But here's another one. The great gathering of the house of Israel comes up in chapter 43. Notice it says, verse 4, since thou wast precious in my sight. By the way, if you pause there for a minute, I don't know about you, but remember when we talked about the grandeur and the greatness and the glory of God compared to the nothingness of mankind and human beings on the earth? Considering that, look at that word again, or that phrase again, since thou wast precious in my sight. The only thing I can compare that huge distance, that gap to, is an experience that I've had multiple times as a new father. When a child has been born, and you look at that little infant as helpless and as vulnerable as can possibly be compared to mom and dad, and you look at that little child who can quite frankly do nothing for you. The child can't repay you. The child can't take away the pain that was caused through labor and delivery for the mother. The child can't even express gratitude. The child can only cost you a lot of sleep and money. And yet, to any parent who has held a newborn and looked into that face and often that vulnerable little soul straight from heaven, you would say, my heart has wrapped around this little creature, if you will, and oh, how I love him or her. She's precious to me. I see that same analogy here. As great as God is and as nothingness as mankind is, God loves you. He loves you because you're precious to him, not because of what he's going to get out of you, but because of what he's put into you. And I think that's why God keeps coming back to his covenant people, not because of what they're giving to him, but because of what he's invested into them. They're precious to him. Have you noticed? You generally value that which you sacrifice for. And the greater the sacrifice, the greater the value, or the greater the love for that person or that thing. Hence the need to avoid idol worship. Because if you're not careful, you're going to put a lot of money and time and energy into things, and your heart is going to be drawn to that rather than to God and to people around you. So, continuing verse 4, since thou wast precious in my sight, thou hast been honorable, and I have loved thee. Therefore will I give men for thee and people for thy life. Fear not, for I am with thee, and I will bring thy seed from the east and gather them from the west. I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, keep not back. Bring my sons from far and my daughters from the ends of the earth. So this great gathering that Isaiah is going to invoke here is for the four corners of the earth. It's from north, south, east, west. It's not just for a little regional group of people. It's for all of God's children who are willing to listen to his voice and hearken into this gathering effort to come into the house of Israel.